Welcome once again to the Sydney Blues Society Fantastic Podcast. It's episode 2. We had a great chat with Jeff and Ron from the Foreday Riders a few weeks ago, and now we're going to delve deeper into the myth, the legend, the amazing contribution they've made to the Blues Society here in Australia, here in the blues scene and music. The two of their die-hard, long-serving fans, amazing advocates for their music and all blues music as well, Jean and Bernard. Welcome, guys, to the podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you, Adam.
Let's go right back, as I like to say, from Maria von Trapp. Let's start at the very beginning. How did you first discover the Foreday Riders and what drew you to their music?
Do you want to? Well, I can remember we were interested in getting out to see live music, and Bernard sort of seemed to know about them. And back in the day, there was also, you could look up in some of the free papers, there were guides to what was happening around. And so we ended up going to the Three Weeds in Balmain. Yep. And that's where we first saw them. So I can remember you'd sort of get there and squeeze in and find a spot up against the wall because the place would be packed. And there was this amazing band playing fantastic music. And then we just started looking out for them whenever they were on.
Do you remember when that might have been, Jane?
Yeah, that was the late 80s.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And we're both from New Zealand, and I'd been here in the early 70s, but I hadn't come across them. My brother had, and he'd mentioned them, but I didn't stay in Sydney very long for the short time I was here. So it was my second trip back when I came back with Jean in the late 80s that we got to meet them and became pretty regular attenders at their gigs.
That Three Weeds gig, that was a residency for the boys back then, wasn't it? I think it was a regular gig.
Yeah, I think it was, because we did go there quite regularly. So I think it was a residency at the time. And I think the lineup were maybe John Powers on bass and Les and maybe Roscoe. I think, or it could have been Stan on bass, but we did see him a few times with John, but I think he was maybe just a little bit earlier.
What was it about the music that drew you in from that very first time at the Three Weeds?
Great sounds. They worked so well together, and just loved the style. Just a really good example of the blues that we were attracted to.
It's very much the Chicago style of jump blues. Not exclusively, but most of what they did, they would have a lot of people up dancing.
That's something we've lost from venues now. I mean, we're starting to slowly get it back, but a bit of go out and dance, whether it be a blues venue or a jazz venue or a country venue or just a rock venue. It's something we've lost, I think, in the modern era, or the current era, I should say, where you try to get up and dance and a security guard will tell you to sit down, or someone behind you will tell you to sit down, whereas that was always what music was about, going back to very early ancient times right up through to now. And music like the Foreday Riders put together, you can't help but dance, can you?
No, that's correct. And it also encourages the band. I mean, they love to see punters having a good time. And so, you'll often hear bands call out and say, come up and dance, there's plenty of room, etc. And that it was definitely a big attraction for me too, because I love dancing and I don't need much encouragement to get up on the dance floor. So, yeah, they were great for that, or they are great for that. So, but you're right, it doesn't happen as much as it used to, which is a shame.
And
do you have
dance enthusiasts used to go to gigs quite a lot too, not just punters getting up and dancing, but we used to do rock and roll dancing with Miss Martine, and several of the blues community were also, learning dancing from people like her and a few of the others in the swing and rock and roll game. And you'd go along to a gig there, or maybe later into the over a decade later, maybe when the Empire was the big event.
Yeah.
And people would be there in full regalia, hairstyle, the works, grease fest on the dance floor.
Yeah.
And it was such an event, you'd want to go and make a thing of it. It really was.
And the Foreday Riders did attract those groups as well. So that, it was great.
And we've lost some of those venues. Like, I remember like the old Birkenhead Tavern, for instance, Birkenhead Tavern used to be an amazing venue,
Well,
and
we've
we've lost some of
actually
those
lost
venues.
the physical building there.
Yeah, exactly.
Sort of replaced with a huge block of flats.
No,
I was trying to explain to someone the other day about how amazing the Birkenhead Tavern used to be on a Friday night, and it's just absolutely packed. And they said, "Where was it?" I said, "Well, it's where those flats were." It's all gone now.
And there was a great amount of space there too. It wasn't no pokey place.
Yeah.
Do you have a favourite memory from a concert or maybe a festival performance that you've always gone back to? That remember that one amazing night?
Oh.
I'm sure there's so many.
So many.
I don't really. It just became a sort of fusion over a relatively short space of time. These guys, we've just got to keep seeing.
I guess for me, I like, we've seen them with various frontmen playing. I mean, I can recall the first time we saw Ray Beagle get up and play with them, and that kind of blew us away. And then they've had it every time they've had a different front person. They kind of refresh. They kind of get some new songs in their repertoire, and for me, that I love about the band is that even though they have been around for so long, they evolve musically because they're still looking to do new stuff. And Shane Pacey has brought some great songs to the mix, and Ron and Jeff aren't slack about looking for new songs either. And the ever interesting Philby Colson, he brought some really different sort of music. So there's been various reincarnations of the Riders that you sort of enjoy those gigs for that difference as well, and refreshing. One of the
personality.
Yeah, one of the things I've often said to Ron and Jeff is you got to get new stuff in, you got to get new songs because you don't want to get stale. If you're going to keep going for so long, you've got to keep that momentum going, and they do.
I mean,
and their last studio album, it's all new songs except that bluesology, and it's they're going strong and still going. Yeah.
Do you remember that first night you saw a young Ray Beagle on stage? Was there something about him that just you knew he was going to be who he is?
Yeah. It was his guitar mastery and his. He was still young and the vocals were still young, but he appeared confident, even though he kind of did the whole looking down, not so much looking at the audience. But it was, I think, his guitar mastery to start with that we were just blown away that someone so young was so good, and, really keen to see more of what he could do. And one of the things I like about the Foreday Riders is that they do nurture new talent, and they're keen to look at, different talents. So that's great.
We're not just talking about one or two people here. We're talking dozens of musicians they would have mentored and supported and guided. And then they get someone, I was talking to the boys and they're saying, like, when they get someone like Ray and I say, like, when I see Ray play, somehow that guitar becomes part of his body. He just fuses himself with it and so on. It's almost the point where when he takes it off, you're expecting his hands to come off at the same time sometimes. But their days do, and they say they just wanted to help people. They just want to give someone another chance that they had to share the stage, to learn, to create. And I think one thing that they said was the fact that the ability to create and to continue to stay fresh. We had an interesting chat, actually off camera about, how Spotify works and that sort of stuff, and saying, well, this is a whole new business component which we have to help collaborate on together and so on. So what about, what is it about the 4 days? I mean, we know they've got that Chicago sound. I mean, you say we saw them you first saw them at the Three Weeds in a back street in Rozelle here in Sydney. What is it about the sound that sets the Foreday Riders apart from other Australian bands?
I think there are a lot of Australian bands obsessed with volume. They're very skilled and often enjoyable, but I'm a little bit wary for my ears with some of them. But the ensemble work in the Foreday Riders is one of the best I've ever seen. The nuancing, the handovers, the way that the dobro and the harmonica work together, and then it'll be, say, the sideman and Stan working together, not just having a go and pulling back. I mean, there are times when you do a little show off, everyone does, but with the band, you know, you're part of it. You're equally part of it. And while Roscoe's powerful, it's a holding together. You know, I mean, there's a lot to be said about a rhythm section, and much of it is holding it together, or just staying a little ahead of the beat, perhaps together, depending. But as part of the band, and it's not a case of I've got to be heard. I'll be heard. They know that, and it's just the way they work together, and things slide around the band rather than fly around the band. And they, in a subtle way, they dance on stage as well. There's a visual component. You know, it's a full event every time we see them.
Yeah, for me, I love it when I see them actually bouncing off each other and laughing and smiling and having a great time. I mean, I love that with any band or any musician if they're interacting with their fellow musicians on stage, and it's lovely to see. And I think the writers just make it seem effortless, and yet, you know, they do some pretty complex stuff at times. So it's you know, it's just a joy to watch and to listen to. Yeah.
Yeah, the variety in their music is really impressive. Milt Jackson, Mose Allison, you know, you get your Muddy Waters, but it's not Muddy's Muddy Waters, it's the Riders' Muddy Waters, you know, and they make it their own. And it's a wide variety of stuff they cover. It's just, you know, there's no chance you're going to get bored with material or anything like that.
Do you think, Jen, you mentioned there that it's effortless, and that synergy the boys have together, not just with each other, but also with the band, but that we talk about between themselves and that interplay they have, that has to be enhanced because they're related, don't you think? I mean, they've grown up together, they've been together for so long as family members, and they call, you know, Stan and Roscoe also family members now. They've been with the band so long, but that has to be related to the fact that they're related, don't you think, as brothers?
I do think there is some of that. I think, and you're right, they spend a lot of time together and they play together. I mean, you know, they may have mentioned to you, they are rehearsing every Wednesday. Every Wednesday
night,
Every Wednesday night. That's a ritual that is only ever interrupted if one of them is away. And then individually they're practicing, you know, but I think there probably is a bit of as you say, you know your family member and they anticipate certain things. But yeah, I guess a combination of that and the fact that they do play together so often is a factor.
And the word that is when they'd get a lot more gigs in a week than you would today.
Very much so.
I mean, it's not only the venues that, you know, the emporia, if you like, that are gone in some cases. It's the fact that they haven't been replaced at the rate they've disappeared.
Yes.
There are some classic venues that we'll never see again, like you mentioned, the Birkenhead, and we haven't seen music at somewhere like the Cat and Fiddle for a long time. They did have a revival maybe a decade ago, I don't know, but didn't seem to last very long. And in other genres too, you know, some places that were famous have stopped having bands. One or two of them have started up again. You wonder how it'll go. But the opportunity for 3 gigs a week, and never mind the 7 you could have had maybe back in the late 60s, early 70s. It's just a whole different thing. You can blame the pokies, but I think there's more to it than that as well.
It's funny, like I've done some work in the Northern Territory, and in Darwin there's one street called Mitchell Street, and there's live music 7 nights a week. There's 10 pubs, and as an artist you can work 6 p.m. gig, 9 p.m. gig, and then a midnight gig. And it's a fantastic vibe. You can go from, well, there's a covers band there, and there's a blues band there, or there's a dance band there, and so on. It's a fantastic thing. And the musicians, they're just doing covers mainly, but it reminds me of what it was like, you know. I think, what was it, the Pink Guide, was it, in the Herald? Or we used to get a gig guide in the Herald on a Friday, and you'd sort of map it out, and you'd go, right, I'm going to go, you know, Birkenhead Tavern here, then Family Hotel at West Ryde there, or Rydalmere, and then I'm going to do that back into the Eastwood Hotel, and it was $2, $5, all these things.
That's right.
You could see your favourite band twice in one night if you were good enough. So I think that's where things are still starting to grow again, which is good. It is. You know, and it's a very slow process, and it's very hard with the economic situation. What about I was going to say, sorry, I just lost my train of thought. What about when the boys were played? How have you seen them evolve over the years? I mean, you've seen them in the late 80s and so on. How have they evolved? I mean, obviously we've all grown and we grow up and so on, but have they evolved musically, or have they stayed true to that sound that they founded on?
I think a lot of the evolution has come with the material and the personalities of the main guitar player, and I think that's been a key feature of evolution. Like Jean mentioned before, Phil Coulson has a very distinct personality and some interesting songs that I remember when he dropped Three Cool Cats on the band, and I thought, wow, you know, this is something out of the box. And every now and then someone like Ray will put a challenge on the band, you know, for maybe the structure of the song. They'll rise to the occasion, but they're like, apart from adapting to personalities and different types of material, Pedro had a very different rock and roll style to somebody like Phil, or somebody like Andrew Reid was a little more laid back personality wise, but he brought in things like the hip shake. You remember that sort of development rather than the evolution. It's not exactly the word I would use, but everyone does evolve.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's almost like reinvigoration. It's a new member comes in, they get reinvigorated, and not that they would demotivate or anything, but it's just it injects another creative surge, I suppose, if that's what you call it. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. So, it keeps you young. So, I mean, we've all aged, but it definitely keeps you young.
I love, we talked before about how the band rehearse every Wednesday night and so on, to the point where everything else revolves around that. A couple of times I tried to tee up interviews with them. We did some interviews with them for the Cronulla Jazz and Blues Festival, and we try and tee up an interview, and every time it's like, can I see you No, we can't do Wednesday because we've got practice Wednesday night. And so I was, what about next Wednesday? No, practice Wednesday night. So I know bands that are signed to major record labels that tour the world that don't rehearse that regularly. So
I know. Well, it's Jeff and Ron. With the rest of the band, it is very much the name of one of the CDs, Herding Cats, because the other band members are so busy in their own personal pursuits, but also in other musical sort of pursuits as well. So sometimes they don't get together until the night of the gig, and then it's seamless. It's like they might have a couple of little, we're going to do this one or we're going to do that one, but you just wouldn't know that they hadn't played for, a year or something like that, which happened recently at a gig we were at, and it was the first time. Ron and Jeff have been playing quite regularly with Graham Druce in a trio mode, acoustic trio mode. But the first Foreday Rider gig for, I think it's a good 10 months, was last couple of Saturdays ago. And you wouldn't have known. They just all fell into the rhythm of things. It was great. Yeah.
What about when they perform live? Again, we'll keep on that. You've seen them recently. Do you both have a favourite song separately? A favourite song that you're looking forward to? That's like that you just can't wait to hear it every time, or has that changed?
I'm always happy to hear Bluesology. I think it's a fantastic song, but I wouldn't want it to crowd out any of the rest just by being the one. It's not that. I remember Jimmy Buffett in a movie of a concert once said, "There's people here just to hear that one song. I better do it."
Yeah.
No, not so much. I got fairly wide and eclectic tastes, so I'm not hankering for that one all the time. But I'm always happy to hear something that they haven't done before.
Definitely like hearing the new stuff. I do have a few favourites. I mean, I like Body and Fender Man, and I do like some of the gospel stuff that Shane's introduced to the band as well. What's that one? Spoonful. I love it.
Howling Wolf.
Howling Wolf,
Howling Wolf,
you know, it's always interesting to hear some of the newer stuff as well. But yeah. And they, you know, Caledonia, that's a good old standard that they do quite well. So, yeah.
You mentioned Howling Wolf there. Has being a fan of the band for so long, has that helped you find other artists that you like, not just in Australia, but like internationally as well? Artists like, I remember I sort of came through from Howlin' Wolf, and that's how I found Little Walter. You know, and you go to those things. Have being fans and followers of the band, has that helped you expand and find other artists both locally and overseas?
For me, definitely.
I think more so for you.
Bernard certainly would have known some of the stuff that they do, but you know, they'll mention this is so and so or this is so and so, and I think must look that up, must look for more of that. So yeah, it has for me. But it's interesting you mentioned Spotify when you were talking about Spotify, and I've actually found. I mean, I make a habit of, I buy the band CD, but if they're on Spotify, I have to, I'll play them on Spotify in the car, etc. But Spotify has actually thrown up, because you listen to this, you might like this. And so I'm finding new artists that way as well. And I was talking to Ron and Jeff a little bit about that, and if I hear something that I really like, I kind of sometimes say, hey, listen to this, what do you guys think about this? So, yeah.
Back to the 4 days for a second, and that's the thing. We can go down all different paths. Music does that, doesn't it? It brings us together in all different walks of life, ages, backgrounds. Even Kiwis, we give them a chance to, come to the country and so on. So, but as that was a few weeks ago, I can get that one in now. So, talk about that connection and so on. I mean, what is it that have you been able to expand that connection? And the band has a following, obviously. You keep connected with other fans. Obviously, you keep connected with the band, but other fans as well.
100%.
Absolutely.
There's actually a group of us that we would regularly seek out, particularly when Ray was playing with the Riders. Going a little bit off track with the Riders, this group actually formed going to see Bridie King at the Bridge on a Sunday night. And that's over 20 odd years ago.
Plus.
Well, Ray's daughter is 23, so it was before that. So, and this group of friends, we would, message and ring and say, hey, Foreday Riders are playing at such and such, and so we would all go to see them, or try and go. And so, yeah, there's certainly a group. And then from there, we've gotten to know other fans. And you're going to these gigs so often that you start to become friends with people that you recognise as going there. The Glovers, case in point, we kind of met them through the blues music, and it's a wonderful. And it doesn't just happen in the blues; it would happen in other genres, of course. But it's wonderful that we've able to expand our social network, partly because of our love of the Foreday Riders.
On that, at a gig or at several gigs, you might slowly expand your circle of fans. But because we run a merch table at most riders' gigs, we also get to talk at greater length to the punters who are looking at the table. And we have to sort of collar up and pretend we know everything about everything we've got on the table.
But we do.
We're better than we were.
It's not lying, it's being creative with the truth.
I didn't say that.
I think that's a Trump quote.
Yeah.
So, and not only that, so coming back to that community and so on, but I think it's sort of thing where there are a lot of bands that I can't see, and there's 2 or 3 that I have, and I always take someone new, and they walk away a fan. And I'm sure you guys have done that dozens and dozens of times.
Yeah.
The music's so infectious, and then the guys in the band, not just the boys, but the brothers, but the whole band, their personalities, but they're so open, they're so endearing to their community. And I think that's where the word community, a blues community, there's a country community, there's jazz communities, but these guys have been such a fabric of this blues community, not in Sydney especially, but also throughout the country for so long. That brings us together, doesn't it? And that's one of the fantastic things that we're trying to celebrate here at this discussion.
That's true.
How do you...
Go on.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, when you take someone new to one of their gigs, and I guess this should happen with anyone who's reasonably successful, but in our cases, a lot of the times it's this particular band. Everyone in the house is having a hell of a time, and your novice goes away with that. Has enjoyed being part of that, not just seeing a great spectacle. But, there's not a sort of there's no one in the whole place who's not moving somewhere.
The vibe.
The vibe is...
And I think that vibe you're talking about is one of the key things too, because there's so many cover bands in Sydney now, it just kills us. But, we used to have the thing that was called the Monday morning coffee or the water cooler discussion, where it was, you'd go, you'd have a coffee with your work colleagues on Monday, having a coffee, or what did you do on the weekend? And you would say, I went and saw the Foreday Riders, or I went and saw the Bushwhackers, or I went and saw the Bondi Cigars. And you'd start to explain to these people who they were, and I'm going to see them again next Friday if you want to come. We don't do that when you go and see, I was at the Bayview Hotel in Gladesville and I saw a great cover band. We don't do that,
Well, it depends who it is, but we'll talk about them some other time.
We come to the end of our chat. I want to ask you, what do you think the band's impact has been on the Australian blues community and the genre itself?
Oh, I think it's encapsulated in the kicker line under their name, the University of the Blues, and it really does. It does capture it. So many people you'll see with their own bands and successful, and even moved to different locations. Now they got a start in the Foreday Riders, and some of them who have history as playing, and it might be a short one, and they might not be on one of the discs, or they might have been caught in a film the ABC did years ago, or a festival that you never hear about anymore, or something like that.
Yeah.
been part of the group, and they've taken away. I've heard groups that have been influenced by them, and at moments you'd swear it was them.
I think there's also, I can recall, Robert Seuss, Continental Robert, from, saying that he used to sneak into their gigs to see Ron. Specifically, he was interested in the harp, but the Foreday Riders and other musicians talking about how they used to go, that the Foreday Riders were their go-to band, and the influences then that they've had. And I think that's quite important. And we touched on the mentoring earlier as well. But yeah, I think they're and we can. I've been talking to people, and like you say, they say, "Oh, what'd you do at the weekend?" I say, "Oh, well, there's a blues band that we do merch for," and and I'll say their name, and someone will go, "Oh, yeah, I remember them.
Yeah.
I remember them."
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah.
And I think that's the legacy that the band's going to leave. They've been around for so long. They're our version, really, of the Rolling Stones, to be honest. And they no one can be Keith Richards for so many different reasons, which we won't get into. But I love how I was saying to the boys, I love how Keith Richards outdid Richard Simmons, the health guru. So that's a discussion for another day. But I think certainly they've left a lasting legacy. But one of the key things I really think I should like to acknowledge is that bands are bands. Bands are fantastic, and we love music. I wouldn't go a day or an hour without listening to music.
Yeah.
But bands are also so in need of fans like the two of you, and it's really what you've done for the band, to be advocates for them, to become friends with them, you become colleagues, and you help with their merch and so on. But even the time you shared with us here today, I mean, Jean, you were just recently nominated for the Sydney Blues Society Service to the Blues Award, and congratulations on that nomination. And that's truly encapsulated, bands need fans, fans need bands as well. It's a synergy, it's a connection which we're never going to break, and it's people like yourselves and the Foreday Riders who lead the way and show just, tomorrow's generation, but yesterday's generation as well, as to this is what it means to us to be part of something. This is what this music means to us. And for that, on behalf of everyone, thank you for your advocacy for their music and for blues music, and certainly for the Foreday Riders as we're rapidly heading. I said to the boys, the 60th anniversary is coming. We're going to have a very big bash and so on.
That's right.
And they said, and then we're going to talk about, the next iteration. So, I was trying to say to them, the Wiggles have reinvented themselves and they've got new members. I said, well, Kiss have cloned themselves into an avatar, so we'll see what happens. But hopefully we're going to see you.
They've got a franchise model to die for.
Perfect, a perfect franchise model. I'll go your halves in that, Bernard. We'll talk offline. So excellent. We won't tell the boys, but it's okay. So look, Jean and Bernard, thank you so much for your time today, and thank you again for your ongoing contribution, not just to the ongoing support and advocacy for Jeff and Ron King of the Foreday Riders, but for what you do and contribute to the blues community here in Sydney, and have done for many, many years. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank
you, Adam.
It's our pleasure.
It really is.
It's wonderful that we've got that opportunity and that we have such beautiful live music available.
Fantastic. We'll see you at the next gig.
Okay.
Let's look forward.
All right. Okay. Bye.
So don't hang up.